is that this is not the current state of the argument, but something that I see as possibly arising in the future. And when you're emphasizing the fact that it's not really a choice. Interestingly enough, I had a friend on Facebook who, for that recent article about the 23 or coma or whatever, posted it and wrote, "If I'm in a coma, please smother me," or something like that. And I'm thinking, well, that's horribly tragic and it's kind of shocking to me. But
I think that's very callous, because your friend is saying to you or to somebody else, "Smother me."
It's like, well, and I was thinking, how might we argue that from this point of view? I mean, I guess we would have to argue from the fact that assisted suicide or euthanasia is never right. But you can imagine that, just as today we can say, "Please donate my organs when I die," you could fill something out if I've been in a coma for.
The organ donation is different because you're supposedly dead, right?
Well, yeah, I'm just
saying. So if I'm dead and I'm not using my organs, why can't you have them?
You could make pre-arrangements, though.
Right.
And that's something that I could see as.
Anyway, the fact is that I think it's very callous to think such a thing right off the bat.
Oh, for sure.
I think, let's go further. If you're to legalize euthanasia for physicians to do it, how does that affect the physician when they're now asked? So currently they're being asked, "Please care, don't let me suffer, provide me good pain management, please care for me, I don't want further medical treatment, but please care for me, I don't want to suffer." And then you change it around, now you're saying to them, "Oh, please inject me." What does it do to the physician when the physician is now intentionally causing death to another person? I think it changes the physician. It changes me. And it also changes society, because as I said also, now we're just debating under what conditions we're going to do this. You say, "Oh, I think we should only do it under that circumstance." My argument to them always is, "Well, that's fine, that's what you think, but maybe the rest of society thinks it should be done for you. We're going to define you as the person who we're going to do this to, and now we do this to you, because the majority of society says it's going to be someone who's defined as being like you." And if I were a person with a disability, I would be very concerned, because to be a person with a disability, often these conditions are very expensive. And so maybe they let you be okay when you're an adult, but what about when you're a little child and we have to make these decisions, yay or nay, at that young age before we've actually become emotionally connected to you? I think that if we allowed euthanasia, the Groningen Protocol would become a reality quickly. Why? Because it's just a natural extension. We're just debating why we do this. If I'm going to do this to an adult in a similar condition, why wouldn't I do it to a child? And then the second thing is, I think you would see the elimination of disability pretty quick.
Yeah.
Now you'd say, "Well, not at first." Well, you're right, not at first. But we become callous pretty quick as a society.
Yeah. I mean, I am concerned just the idea of arguing from, or going with the argument that they are proposing for us of a person's right to choose for themselves.
Right.
And that could be.
And as I say, I believe that's a false argument. And only, my response to somebody is, well, I guess in a purely perfect world, there might be a right to choose. But we don't live in a purely perfect world, so let's not legalize this. Thank you. Yeah.
Just follow up on that, Madeline. Like it seems like there's this thought in our society that if you don't have this certain quality of life, that should be the way you just end it, right? So like your friend, if she's in a coma, so she's already knocked out the fact that she won't have any quality of life, that no good will come out of it. So it's kind of nicks me. And how do you it's even like that with the abortion debate? How do you change the mindset of people who don't really value life in all its forms?
Okay, I'm going to say to you, you should not bring the abortion debate into the euthanasia.
No, I know.
Why shouldn't you do it? Well, very simply, where there might be correlations between the two, the fact is that you're creating a whole new problem with the issue if you do that. Now, here's the point. We already have devalued people with disabilities in our society significantly, and we know that by their own personal experience. So don't take my word for it, because I'm not a person with disability. I've not experienced the social devaluation. But you talk to somebody who is with a disability, who talks about the negative attitudes towards them, and then you apply it to the issues of euthanasia and assisted suicide, you can see there's clearly a problem. Now, the fact is, people say all the time, "I wouldn't want to live like that." Well, what do they actually say about the person who is living like that? What about a person who is now an adult, who was born with spina bifida, and is in a wheelchair, are they confined to a wheelchair, or is the wheelchair just gives them access? How do we use our language? I think it's an important point, because the fact is we need a social shift. That's what we need. And one of those ways of gaining a social shift is truly understanding, well, what does it mean to have dignity? And if I speak about somebody as, I wouldn't want to live like that, obviously I'm bestowing a certain very low level of dignity upon their own life. And how does that translate to these issues? It does translate directly. Yeah. The law is there to protect them. So that's the other thing. They say, oh, well, the law is outdated and it's restrictive, it's paternalistic. No, actually, read the law. The law is designed to protect you. And it's designed to protect you from some people who might actually not see your life as worthy of living. So, and we're all to live together, yes.
When you were talking about Switzerland, I think you gave 3 figures, euthanasia and...
It was the Netherlands, yeah.
Oh, Netherlands, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what was the 3rd figure?
Oh, deaths without consent.
So isn't that?
Yeah, that would be murder. And how come none of these physicians have been arrested? And those few cases that actually were reported that do not fit the criteria in the Netherlands, as I say, every year they investigate a few. Have any of those doctors served time in jail for breaking the rules? Because remember, the investigation happens after the person's dead. And now they're saying, well, that was not a good case. And they look at it and say, well, that was probably outside of the rules. Well, I guess the rules are just the games we play by, you know. But the fact is the rules are just there really to make us feel better. So we can say, oh, it's okay, we have safeguards in place. But once you allow killing, you know, come on, it's the same thing. You'd say, well, what about the case of depression? Well, in the Netherlands, euthanasia is acceptable for reasons of depression. And that came also by a court case. You know, Dr. Shabat had euthanized a woman who was severely depressed. Okay? The court said it was okay. Why? Because she was suffering. Well, we're just debating the reasons for it. That's all we're doing. You said it's okay to kill. That was fine. So now we're just going to say, now today is for depression, and tomorrow's going to be for this reason. And in the end, are there really any? In the end, are there really any restrictions? The Dutch euthanasia movement, what's their big push right now? Their big push is the last will pill. Now, I'm told by a friend of mine that I shouldn't use the language of the other side, because last will pill actually has a bit of a nice ring to it, right? The idea is that I'm 80 years old and I'm tired of living. That's the term they use, tired of living. But wait a second, I'm healthy and I'm 80 years old, but I think I've had enough of life, so the doctor should be able to prescribe the last will pill. I think that's pretty darn foolish. If you consider, I'm a man, okay? And at 80 years old, a lot of these men have health issues and everything, and they become very dependent on their elderly wives. And the elderly wives are usually quite loving, you know? Usually. What about the odd one who says, I've had enough of this guy, you know? The last will pill sounds pretty good. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, you know? But that's what they're pushing for. What does that mean? There is no restriction to it, is what they're saying. There should be just the last will pill. What's this Dr. Nitsky, Dr. Death in Australia, what's he doing? He's promoting what he calls the peaceful pill. Right? The peaceful pill. Nice word. You laugh. It's serious. The peaceful pill. What's the idea of the peaceful pill? That you should be able to, at any time you're choosing, take the pill and die. Well, guess what? We all get depressed. Some people actually don't. Some people are actually pretty, uppity type. Most people get depressed. Most people have very down times in their life. And then you're going to put in this peaceful pill? And they asked Dr. Nitsky several years ago, it was in a National Review Online. So you put National Review Online, peaceful pill, Dr. Philip Nitsky, National Review Online, Google that. And they interviewed him about this, and they asked him about troubled teens. Should this be available to troubled teens? Now remember, this Dr. Philip Nitsky, Dr. Death, he's really into, no, it's about choice, Well, if a troubled teen were to find the need for the peaceful pill, then there shouldn't be a restriction on it, right? What do you mean, troubled teen going through depression, his girlfriend broke up with him and all that. Like, give me a break. It's ridiculous. But that's what it's about.